Sympathy for Joe Biden. This is commentary from James Brown. Consider Joe Biden, the ambitious, opportunistic, young scamp politician who jumped the line in his 20s to become one of the youngest senators ever back in 1973. Consider Joe Biden, a young sprite politician who knew nothing but Washington and decided that he wanted or maybe needed to be president of the United States, the most powerful job in the most powerful nation on earth. That job is something he's wanted since at least 1984, the year I was born. He didn't run until 1988, but he was never the guy. In fact, Joe was tarred and feathered, not literally, but in the political sense, and ran out of the 1988 race for being an embarrassing liar and plagiarist. Consider Joe Biden, a career politician known for his gaffes, licking his wounds, toiling in the background, gaining power, seeking the spotlight, but passed over time after time after time after some time for the presidency, a role that he felt he deserved for 2 decades. He watched as the Clintons, Bill and Hillary, rose to power out of nowhere. Joe was patient, biding his time, waiting his turn, only to run again and be dismissed again in 2008, until a young, inexperienced politician turned presidential nominee named Barack Obama brought him into the fold. Consider Joe Biden, Vice President of the United States, being told by perhaps President Obama himself in some room in the West Wing of the White House that despite Joe's decades of public service, in the tradition that the vice president of a 2-term president would be the next standard bearer for their party, that Hillary Clinton would be Barack Obama's chosen successor. All while news reports circulated that Joe is too old for the job he wanted for decades. Consider Joe Biden leaving Washington, D.C., a place he's worked since 1974, as a man named Donald Trump, with no political experience, jumped the line and was crowned president. Consider Joe Biden, a man who, if we are honest, and we really need to be honest here, has been showing signs of cognitive decline for the better part of a decade, and maybe longer. We don't know, because he was mostly out of the public eye in the immediate years after the Obama presidency. Joe found himself, by some strange turn of events, finally the chosen one, finally the guy, finally on the verge of the presidency, a job he's wanted for half a century. Consider Joe Biden knowing that he's so much of the guy, that the Democratic Party, fearful of Bernie Sanders, its next generation of leaders, and Donald Trump, went out of its way to smash all opposition, changing the rules, the formats, bending the law, all to stack the deck for Joe during 2 consecutive election cycles. This while calling all who questioned how lucid Joe was conspiracy theorists. Up to just a couple weeks ago, even on the day of the presidential debate, they chose this, all while knowing that Joe ain't what he was. Consider Joe Biden a shell of himself, slurring words, staring off into the distance, while hearing calls for his resignation after one of the biggest embarrassments in American political history. Joe knows that in this rare moment in the history of our representative republic, that the Democratic Party has boxed themselves in. On this occasion, it is truly one man, one vote, and the vote is Joe's. Consider Joe Biden, selfish, full of himself, in the final stretch of his long, storied political career, telling George Stephanopoulos just a few days ago, "If the Lord Almighty said, 'Joe, get out of the race,' then I would get out of the race. But the Lord Almighty's not coming down. No, Joe won't go on his own. He'll be kicking and screaming and slurring as his deferred dream explodes. And if that doesn't happen, boy, this country has bigger problems. On that note, I'm James Brown, and as always, be well.